While we focus on our next topic, in fact, we're talking about the perfect blend because we all know that sometimes we really, as consumers, we want to go to a mall where we can have it all. Is it a necessity? Maybe not, but is it convenient? Absolutely yes. So let's actually find out that what would be the big trends that we could see for the mixed-use space, especially over the next 2 to 5 years. And all that and more, let's also find out how can brands after all, take advantage of the mixed-use property projects. A lot more insights coming your way. For that, let me quickly invite our set of speakers. It's going to be a panel discussion again. And to spearhead the panel discussion, I'd like to invite our session moderator. We have with us Swati Giri Mohindra, who's a Senior Director, Cushman & Wakefield. So I'd like to invite Swati to please come on the stage. Thank you, Swati, for joining us. And she's going to be responsible in extracting a lot of insights from her fellow panelists, which only means let me quickly invite them on the stage. I'd like to please invite Shibu Phillips, Director, Shopping Malls, Lulu India. Rajendra Kalkar, President, Malls, The Phoenix Mills Limited. I'd like to further invite Ajay Prasad, Managing Director at Taurus Investments Holdings. May I also please invite V. Muhammad Ali, CEO, Forum Malls Prestige Group. I'd like to also invite Arvind Mayer, who is the CEO, Secure Parking Solutions. Rohan Anand, Director, Asset Management, Virtuous Retail, South Asia. And we'll also be having Udhav Podar, Managing Director, Bhumika Realty, who will be joining the panelists in a short while. I know we all enjoyed the yummilicious dal makhani and the desserts as well. Looks like we are all filled with a lot of energy. If that's the scene, can we have an energetic round of applause? Please help me welcome our next set of speakers. Let's bring that energy back in the air. And I'm going to quickly hand it over to Swati. Over to you then.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for making it here, especially after such a nice and a heavy lunch. We hope that we'll be able to make this session an interesting one for you. So just to give you a brief background as to, and maybe doing a bit of a context setting on the course of this discussion. So if you go back, talk about the 1980s and the 90s, where retail was actually concentrated mostly in streets and, streets of India, of towns. And then eventually then came the introduction of shopping centers, smaller assets, where I would say retail was the main driver, but it was supported by F&B and some entertainment thrown in. Cut to today, where you have larger assets and entertainment, F&B is actually becoming a very, very important part of the entire product mix. In fact, there are a lot of synergies between these categories which are actually driving the entire retail consumption experiences today. So you have, this trend which is happening. And in addition to that, what is also happening is that now retail is not just, the shopping experience is not just limited to closed box retail malls as we know it. We've seen over the last few years, we've seen the emergence of F&B hubs. We've seen the, emergence of retail, entertainment, F&B coming up as part of, commercial office buildings. So in effect, I think what's happening and what we are seeing here is this trend of retail shopping actually going into mixed-use social community spaces, where I think a lot of segments are kind of coming together, creating that synergy. So I think in this context, so Shibu, you are running one of the most, I would say, most successful developments in India, wherein I think that's, and the flavor and reason why Lulu Kochi is actually known for is the fact that it's a state-level destination. People actually travel large distances to, to visit the mall. So what is your take on the tier 1, tier 2 consumption, retail consumption, and what is driving this?
Good afternoon. See, if I looked at the data in 2010 and someone just told me that in tier 2 city or tier 3 city of Kochi, the per capita income is half of what is of Mumbai, but the per capita expense is equal to that of Mumbai, I never believed it. Because obviously, I operated in Mumbai, ran shopping malls in Mumbai, so I always said, no, it's not possible. Mumbai consumes much, much higher. I'm sure today's data might be different. But when we opened the mall, it was something different. The data was coming correct because first of all, we did a million square feet plus mall. It was a 1.8 million square feet mall there. Obviously, we knew that we had to make a destination mall. Otherwise, we never knew because Kochi had only a population, Kernakulam district had only a population of 3 million. And we knew that we need at least half of that consumers to come to the mall. Then only it will survive. Obviously, half will not come. With obviously the type of populations we know, categories. So we knew that the entire country, the entire state has to come. Then we curated it like that. We obviously did a lot of work with respect to what type of brands are needed because sometimes everyone makes this mistake, one fits for all. That concept doesn't work. You have to curate it according to the requirements of that, and we did that. And then rest is history. So we completed 10 years and still doing very, very well. Trading density over 3,500. Brands still wait for space in that mall, and a destination which is spoken in the state for every reason about it. Obviously, there's a lot of hard work we put in that. So any city in this country, whether it is tier 2 or tier 3, is ready, and that is because of the fact that e-commerce also played a very important role. And I'm sure that the data of COVID, during COVID time of what e-commerce boom happened is known because of the fact that due to the mobile connectivity, which is one of the best in the world in this part of the country, and which 4G and 5G, this every consumer in whoever is having the capacity is ready to consume every part of the whether it is fashion or any other category, but obviously predominantly fashion through e-commerce. And because that appetite is built up by e-commerce, there is also an urge to come and see it on the store. And you know that e-commerce brands are coming to offline because that's the way they survive. So then these tier 2 and tier 3 city, one mall or two mall, whoever does a good job, and I'm telling you, they also are as their requirements are asked to create. They want to be acknowledged, they want to have personalized service, and they want good mall management. So if you're managing to curate it like that with a nice ingress and egress, parking and everything with nice set of brands, then there is the tier 2 or tier 3 is irrelevant. It will do as well as any other metro. So that's our take from the malls we operated, and we now operating close to 6 malls or 5 malls in the country, and predominantly most of them are in the tier 2 cities. Our learning is that there is a big catchment which is there, but obviously you need to curate it according to the requirements.
Thank you, Shibu. So you were talking about, I think, e-commerce and how, and I think one of the things that we've seen is that because of e-commerce and the omni-channel, the consumer today is very well aware of, what they want to do. In fact, window shopping as such has kind of, really gone down. In fact, and this probably ties into what Pushpa was saying in the morning, is that spend per footfall is increasing, which means conversions are increasing. So my next question is to you, Rohan. So in your assets, what have you seen? Have you seen, the importance of things like, pop-up stores or flagship stores, which give that kind of an experience to customers? Is that driving the overall experience? So what is your take on that?
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So I would like to split this into two ways of looking at things. The first lens is obviously the customers are a lot more aware through their physical travel as well as online travel. They have awareness about the brands, their positioning, what they represent, the values. So to a large extent, yes, window shopping as a pastime, we say, has been impacted significantly. But then there's this other side where customers who are entering a center have flexibility in their purchases. And we've seen interesting correlations between a value-oriented men's fashion mini anchor with a international fast fashion anchor. It's very interesting to see how the customer shops in both of these formats. So for an operator at least, it's very important to get your mix diversified. I won't say right, because right could mean different things in different cities, but you need to be diversified. And that could mean looking at different concepts. One of those could be pop-ups. We're actually toying around with pop-ups because it's symbiotic in a way. There's a lot of domestic brands which have cropped up in recent years, and pop-ups gives a good way for them to enter the physical realm, not get tied up with very onerous commercial agreements, and at the same time just give an element of surprise to visitors who are coming to your center. So from that perspective, yes, it's something which we are observing. On the flagship story, I think that's a bit of a mixed bag. I think it's inevitable for retailers to launch flagships, but they cannot launch it everywhere. They have to limit it because it limits their expansion potential if they launch flagship everywhere. Secondly, it involves a lot of capex, and they can't really afford to have flagship stores everywhere without either their marketing budget subsidizing it or the landlord. And both of them are tricky territories to navigate. So I see more of a hub and spoke model playing out over here. You'll have a few flagship stores in some location. You'll have regular stores in other locations. And it has to be a symbiotic relationship between the operator and retailer, because especially for retailers with under 500,000 square feet of leasable area, only having flagship stores will also impact their commercial, their offering. So it needs to work hand in hand. So largely, I feel, yes, there is going to be more and more of these concept pop-ups, flagship stores. There might be other uses that will come in. If I have to go out of my lab and give a very wild projection, you can even start having, for instance, indoor farming in the future in some of these spaces, which are dead spaces or underutilized spaces. That's 5, 10 years down the line. Right now, we're already seeing last mile fulfillment centers. We're seeing medical. We're seeing education entering retail spaces. Because these not only help you lower your operating costs, they help bring a diversity of uses. So all of these components together are going to add to the diversity of uses, are going to help you, as a landlord at least, hedge your bets for the future, will help the customer who's coming in and not looking to window shop, offer them something additional that they can also look at while they're visiting a center.
Yeah, and that, just kind of drives the point that, that malls today or shopping centers today are not just, shopping oriented. It's actually coming up as being more of social spaces. As I say, I think mixed use does seem to be the flavor of the decade, if I would say. My next question would be to you, Ali. We saw this trend pre-pandemic where, the F&B segment was seeing a lot of difficulties. We really didn't know whether the revival would happen. But now that things have normalized, we've seen that F&B has come back stronger than ever. In fact, we are actually seeing this trend where F&B is contributing a very large portion to the mall's overall revenues in terms of rentals, in terms of footfalls as well. So what has your experience been, in the entire portfolio of Prestige?
Well, while everybody was talking, I was looking at this board here. It says Shopping Center Summit and Awards. I'm thinking we should change that. Our shopping centers are becoming less and less of shopping centers. So they are becoming like social centers. So you asked me about F&B. I think F&B did very well during pandemic. Apparel didn't do as well. And then they are doing even better now. And why I'm saying we shouldn't call ourselves shopping centers and social centers more, because man is a social animal. Now, we are in Delhi. Now, if I ask someone a question, if I ask Shibu, we are here, let's catch up, let's go somewhere. Shall we go to the mall next door or shall we go to Cyber Hub? What do you think Shibu is going to say? It's an obvious choice that people will make. Man is a social animal. and people like to socialize. And the best form of socializing is through food, through culture. Shopping eventually happens, you know. I said this many times, I say this again. Shopping today is defined as a process where people are buying things that they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't know. So that's what happens. So you end up buying things which you never thought. So you went to see this big Apple store and you're walking out with a 1.2 lakh rupees phone and you didn't know why you bought that. So that's the process. And with that process, luxury brands are able to sell products which you can't normally justify. So we realized this, and then that's why Prestige Group, we are there in all aspects of development. So we decided to make a new set of malls. So with this information and this analysis, we have opened a mall in Bangalore, Brigade Road. I'd like to invite all of you. It's called the Forum Rex Walk. It has only restaurants.
Wow.
And the anchor is PVR Director's Cut, and restaurants, 1.5 lakh square feet of restaurants.
1.5 lakhs of
And
restaurants only.
yeah, we just opened 3 months back. All restaurants are leased out, open. Some restaurants are doing very good business. With that excitement and the encouragement, we are putting up 3.5 lakh square feet development in Whitefield, which is only F&B, where we have aligned a 75,000 square feet microbrewery as an anchor, and probably get almost everybody that we know of in food. So we are aligning with many people here to redo. And then very soon, we are looking at putting up almost 1 million square feet, where the primary anchor is food. So, you know, how many times will you think about shopping in a day? How many times do you buy something for your wardrobe? 10 times a year? For men, it's much less. Women, maybe a little more. 10 to 12 times in a year, you have done something which comes into the wardrobe. So you have gone out, spent money, which comes inside your wardrobe. But you think about food 3 times a day, because that's how you're designed to function. So that's about, say, 1,000 times a year. So in that, this becomes an excuse where people would like to, you know, go. So that is, according to me, the differentiation that we have to create. We have to move from the word shopping, which is consumption, a physiological process of buying clothes, to something different, which is food, to cultural events, live music performance, theater, art, culture, and we become social centers which will draw people many more occasions than where they normally buy something for wardrobe.
So I think experiential is the way to go, is what I'm hearing. And I think when we talk about experiential retail and you know, social spaces, entertainment is a very, very important component. So my next question would be to you, Rajendran. I mean, so how have you seen entertainment, leisure, F&B driving the performance and you know, of all your assets, and how and what has Phoenix done recently to kind of, you know, completely uplift the entire consumer experience?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the question. It's a very lovely question to our host. You know, there are 3 very important parameters when you look at what you are saying: the retail scape, the landscape, and the hardscape. Content for these 3 is very critical for who's coming to the mall. So when a consumer is coming to the mall, he needs all these 3 things today. Today, aesthetics have become extremely important for a consumer. I think his first choice is whether it is aesthetically appealing or not. I don't know how many of you know, but today you'll find F&B's opening which says it's an aesthetic restaurant, whatever cuisine they might be selling. But there's a very niche word which is going on these days. And I think that is applicable to all hardscapes, that everything needs to be aesthetically pleasing to a consumer. So aesthetics is becoming important. Traditionally, in any business that you do, content is the most important thing. In today's parlance, content for a consumer is not necessarily only shopping. The content for him is the experience that he gets when he enters and exits the mall. So that experience and content of the mall Today, the focus is perhaps on wellness, F&B, aesthetics, and entertainment. Now, entertainment and F&B and aesthetics, they all go hand in hand because you can't have something which is substandard. Entertainment has gone a level above from a consumer expectation. In earlier India, concerts and all of those was not a extremely popular kind of event that you would like to go and attend. I don't know how many of you have seen, there was a large, first of a kind international event which happened at Mumbai Racecourse called Lollapalooza. Uh, in a day, they had about 2 lakh visitors, and the ticket size was 10,000 for entry. You can imagine that means in 2 days, 4 lakh people came and each of them paid at least 10 lakh for entry, and then the F&B and the consumption happened there. So that's the scale of an event that consumers is now trying to interact with. And I think the malls have to adapt to such events for consumers to come to the mall. It's not purely shopping which is going to bring the customers to the mall. It is all these retail scape, hardscape, landscape, and the entertainment which will bring consumers to the mall. And I think that is a very key focus for every developer to bring forward so that they can retain and call the customers. And this is happening primarily more fast after the pandemic. Because pandemic, what has happened is the life has become so easy after pandemic, you can get anything that you want at your doorstep. Now we have to bring the consumer to the mall, keeping his interest in mind. See, earlier perhaps just a Nike store and an Adidas store was a good attraction for a consumer because he had no other option but to come to a high street or a mall or wherever to go to the store to shop. Today that's not the case. He can order Nike at midnight, 3 a.m., whenever he wants, whatever he wants, whichever model he wants. So now he needs to be called, and that calling is based on these contents and these factors of design, look and feel, architecture, landscape, and of course, the content of whether it is entertainment or brands. So brands have become equally more important for a mall, what kind of brands you get into the mall, what will be that byproduct of his coming to the mall for some other reason and then shopping. So shopping is not the primary motive. The primary motive to call a consumer would be more of other experience and services for which he is coming to the mall. And that is how this whole evolution has happened from being just a shopping center, what Ali was saying, that the name needs to change from maybe a shopping center to something else. And I always call all, lot of people say now they have become retailment centers and all of that. But I call all our malls as modern mandirs, that you must pay a bi-weekly, tri-weekly visit to the modern mandir if you have to satisfy your inner ego, your peace of mind.
So, when you're talking about experience, one of the thought which actually came into my mind is that I think a lot of the times the consumer experience actually starts from before you enter the mall. One of the critical things which is there is parking. Uh, all of us have been there. I think a choice of whether to, visit one mall or I would say probably one development or another, whether it is a high street or a mall. I think the decision, a lot of it depends upon the convenience of parking. So, Arvind, you've been a veteran in this space. I think I think any asset, whether it is a commercial, retail, whatever, I think you've been involved there, working on the parking aspect. How do you see what are people doing differently? What are developers doing differently now that you have these mixed-use spaces where you have commercial office, you have a hotel thrown in, and along with it there is a retail or there is an F&B hub. So, what are developers doing, or what are the trends in planning such spaces to ensure the consumer social experience?
Good afternoon, everyone. What we find more and more, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, is that people are moving to mixed-use development. And by mixed use, I mean they have offices, they have banquets, they have hotels, residences, service residences, right? One of the earlier assets which we worked with in design, etc., was the Senapati Bapat Marg in Pune Pavilion. Then there was Phoenix, which has, again, most of the malls are mixed use. Brigade has mixed use. But over the last few years, we find that most of the office towers, they have retail on the first and second floor. Also, especially in the NCR, the new malls which are coming, they also have a combination of residences or office or hotels, etc. Now, the big advantage of this is that this helps to build a community, right? So all the people who live there, they work there, they then go down to the mall or the retail, and then they bond, and because they bond, they know each other, and it helps to build the community, it helps to socialize, which is, as I hear, a big need these days, more than just shopping. Now, when it comes to the parking requirements of all these set of consumers is very different. For an office goer, sometimes the parking is free, otherwise it's monthly. He needs to be able to come in and go out fast. Residences, they don't want to have the same entry lane as retail because there's always a choke point, right? And for banquets, they need valet. They don't want their customers to pay. Hotels, customers also don't pay, to park in a hotel. So from the parking point of view, it becomes quite challenging. And then it becomes essential to design the parking in a way that you cater to the needs of all these in terms of entry, exit, circulation, and also access control. So you need to have systems wherein, if you're a resident or an office, you are able to enter without running into a hassle of paying or getting stopped unnecessarily. The big advantage of having a mixed use, especially in office and in retail, is that the office is busy on weekdays, while retail is busy on the weekend and in the evenings. So therefore, the parking space complement each other. So therefore, if you need 1,000 spaces for retail and 1,000 spaces for parking for office, then you can probably manage with 1,500 or 1,700 because they complement each other. And as far as the DP norms are concerned or the bylaws are concerned, in Noida, they've changed it. They said if you have a retail outlet, then you need one parking for every 35 square meters. And if it's a retail come office, you need one parking for every 50 square meters because you can share the space. The trend forward, we are seeing more and more. In fact, on hand, we have more than a dozen assignments for mixed use, designing the mixed use parking. And it's a great thing for building, the community over there so that people keep, they go to the office, come down, shop, go to the pub, enjoy themselves. Or even if they're, nearby residences, they're able to, so it's happening more and more, especially in offices.
Thank you. So, Ajay, my question to you is that, we're talking of mixed use. That is the entire theme of this discussion. We're talking of mixed use. And when we talk of mixed use, the synergy between commercial office and retail spaces is seen to be quite high. What have you seen, in your experience? What is driving this kind of a synergy? How much of it actually works, or is it just something that we've kind of been hearing about, maybe, so just if you can just put some light onto this entire part.
Thank you, Swati. Good afternoon. So, you make a great point. Commercial office and retail often go hand in hand. Now, in a lot of markets, we have the benefit of operating on 4 continents. So, we have mixed-use assets in North America, South America, Europe, and now in Asia. So what we see is that there is a lot of synergy between these 2 uses, multiple reasons. One is office today, especially in today's day and age, we're seeing a bifurcation of the haves and have-nots in office buildings. Now, the haves are the ones which are richly amenitized, high quality, open office spaces. And the have-nots are everybody else who doesn't. And this is less so in India, where most office space is only 15 years old and therefore still grade A. But if you look at markets like North America and Europe, where there is A and then there's B and Cs, what we are seeing is, if you look at any metric like occupancy, rent, and so on, there is a pronounced sort of detachment between the A's and the B's and C's today. And this has been the case more pronounced since this whole hybrid working kind of thing happened. Even in markets like New York, where there is the grade A office is let's say low single-digit vacancy, but B and C offices are seeing high double-digit vacancies, subleasing, and so on. The difference is A, design of the offices. B, it is the mixed-use nature. So if you take a case in point, a lot of offices, traditionally, high-rent offices in places like Madison Avenue, Avenue of the Americas, as compared to newer developments like Brookfield's Manhattan West or Hudson Yards, that's a related Oxford property, those are all richly amenitized, and one amenity is retail and F&B, right? This could be ground first floor retail F&B. It could be much larger enclosed retail F&B in close proximity to office. There is a clear, and there is research on this, which shows there's a clear rent premium and occupancy premium for offices which are integrated with retail. On the other hand, the retail feeds off the office, because if you have a 1 million square foot office tower standing on top of your shopping center, to quote one of my architects, the office irrigates the retail, right? And to the point about parking, they complement each other in a certain way, because the office provides a captive customer base to your F&B and to a certain extent to your retail during weekdays, which for typical retail, your weekdays are kind of a lull except for the evenings, but the office is very active during the weekday mornings and afternoons, so you have a captive audience. So in that sense, economically, it works really well, but even from a sustainability perspective, when a lot of your customers and a lot of your office workers are walking to their amenities and walking to their offices, as opposed to taking a car, the building itself, the overall complex itself becomes way more sustainable. So in that sense, there's a clear premium for a mixed, well-developed, well-designed, balanced mixed-use complex over either standalone office or standalone retail.
That's a very interesting point. In fact, I think over the years, probably, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, if you were talking about retail, was not really considered to be sustainable, especially retail, which was part of mixture of offices, was not really considered to be a sustainable component. But today, I think we're seeing this, and with the way the trends are growing, with the way the synergies are driving up, retail on its own is actually becoming more of a, I would say, lucrative asset class than the others. So that's a very interesting thing, parallel that you drew up there, Ajay. Thank you so much. I think my last question, and yes, I think we are running out of time. My last question would be to you, Uddhav. We've seen you being very active in the mixed-use space, in the tier 2 cities. And so is investing in retail and such similar social spaces, and that's the trend that we've been seeing, emergence of F&B hub. We're not just talking of standalone retail malls today. But is retail more of a risk hedging strategy for you? Is that how it's been in terms of, overall returns, investments,
Thank you. First of all, apologies for being late. I had a flight which got delayed. So I think it started off with what you're saying as a risk hedging strategy. To just give you an example, our first development was a 1 million square feet in a city, Udaipur, which is a tier 3 town. So we wanted to build 1 million square feet, and we built 3.5 lakh square feet retail with office and hospitality. And we realized it worked really well. In tier 2 towns and 3 towns, the office space requirement or the demand is not so high as compared to a Bombay or Delhi or a Bangalore or those cities. But hospitality works very well with them. So that's what we're seeing. We built one hotel. We're building 3 more hotels in the same compound now because there's good demand for tourists coming into that city. Plus, in these cities, a lot of times they don't have places to go out in the evenings. They might have a lot of tourist destinations, but in the evenings, the tourists are free. So we are creating a lot of F&B and entertainment for these same tourists to stay in our mall and entertain themselves. So that's how we started. The starting point was hedging, but we realized it started complementing each other really well. So just to answer that question, that's where we are. And in our future developments, that's what we are planning now. If you're going to a bigger market, we're doing more office. If it's a smaller market, we're mixing more of hospitality with retail.
That's very interesting, and I think that has been the underlying theme of, I think whatever that everybody has said, that it's not just standalone retail malls today. Retail was working very, very well with other asset classes, and even within retail, I think, F&B, entertainment, I mean, these were categories which were considered to be support categories. These categories are now coming more to the, forefront rather than lifestyle, rather than the traditional lifestyle, apparel, retail categories. So I think what we're hearing from everybody is that definitely, I think, it's not the, I think the mixed use mixed use and the emergence of social hubs where, people are not just coming in to shop, but the intent is to kind of, be present socially, a lot of, I think a lot of a meeting ground, entertaining. So I think that is actually becoming more important, and experiential is actually seems to be the buzzword. Yeah.
I'd like to add one perspective. Something came in my mind, what you spoke and what you asked about. Return on investment versus the risk for malls. Now, this is the interesting part about malls. It's very difficult for office space to break the benchmark. So if I'm building an office in this area with these specs, and if this is the going rate of rentals, then you fall in line. Right. It's very, very difficult for any office to say, we are different, because they are these specs, and they are these deliverables. So if those who are matching in that neighborhood, you fall in line, and you don't have risk there. Malls, there's no benchmark. Sky's the limit. It's because office is not linked to the sales of the companies. So a 3M can, shoot up in business, and so can any other MNC. Yeah. But then it doesn't help the office rents. But malls, sky is the limit. So it's a process that you have to go through, because your return on investment is linked to the retail sales that happen in your mall, some sales of all the occupiers. So if you can work, and if you have the knack of taking it up to a much higher number than what the average market performance is, then your rentals also will be the highest in the country.
Absolutely, and I think this also links to the fact that, the consumers, I think the consumer needs and wants are always evolving. So there were certain things which were probably, must-haves, maybe a decade ago, or probably, so these, or maybe, the wants, these have become must-haves, hygiene factors, which I think people need to kind of, which the developers need to provide to the consumers if they want people to kind of, come to their developments and spend a larger time there. So absolutely, I think, Ali, very, very valid point.
I'd like to add one more thing on the ROI part. Most of the planning in cities, the FAR norms are such that you have to build vertically. You only get 40-50% ground coverage in India, in most cities. So your FSI is unutilized as per our planning, and the FSI costs are quite high. So in a way, your ROI also works out higher if you can build a hotel or office on top. Otherwise, that FSI is unutilized. Retail can't go vertical. So that's another point from the ROI point of view.
But I'm getting reminders that, we need to wrap up now. Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, bye-bye.